My daughter-in-law was at a rooftop restaurant celebrating her promotion. I was home alone with a bowl of instant soup. Then my phone lit up. Jasmine, heat up the leftovers in the fridge. Don't waste them. I typed back, of course. Then I put the phone down, walked to my room, and started packing because she had no idea whose name was first on that mortgage. My name is Jasmine Jones. I'm 70 years old. And to understand that night, you need to understand the 3 years before it. George died 4 years ago. Prostate cancer. 18 months from a diagnosis. To the last morning I held his hand. We'd been married 44 years. When he was gone, that house became a place where grief lived in every corner. I'd open a cabinet and find his coffee mug, hear a floorboard creak and feel my heart lift for half a second before I remembered. 6 weeks after the funeral, Marcus came to visit. He had Rachel with him, and that particular smile I recognized from when he was 16 and wanted the car keys. He sat at George's kitchen table and talked about mortgage rates, school districts, how expensive everything had become, until eventually he got around to what he actually came to say. The house was worth just under $400,000. I owned it outright. Marcus needed a down payment. He needed a co-signer for a mortgage his salary couldn't carry alone. He needed his mother. You'd have your own room, Rachel said warmly. Your own bathroom. The kids adore you. We take care of you, Jasmine. Like real family. Here's what I want you to understand about that moment. I was 67 years old. I'd run a household, raised a son, managed our finances, and spent 18 months watching my husband die with as much dignity as either of us could hold on to. I was not a naive woman, but grief does something strange. It makes being needed feel almost identical to being loved. And I was so tired of being alone in that house full of absence. So I said yes. What would you have done sitting across from your son in your dead husband's kitchen, that quiet? I sold the house, gave Marcus $60,000 toward the down payment, co-signed the mortgage, moved into the third bedroom of a house in a gated community with a fountain out front that I thought was a little much, but nobody asked me. Rachel had a schedule ready before the moving boxes were unpacked. I woke at 5:30 to start breakfast, packed the children's lunches, walked them to the school bus, and came home to a kitchen Rachel had already inspected with one finger along the countertops. Laundry on Mondays and Thursdays, ironing Wednesdays, dinner 5 nights a week because Rachel was too tired and Marcus worked late. My knees started hurting on the stairs around month 4. I didn't mention it. To who? Rachel called me Jasmine exactly twice in 3 years, both times in front of guests she wanted to impress. Every other time it was Mom, said the way you'd say the name of a household appliance. Did you ever notice the moment someone stopped seeing you as a person and started seeing you as a convenience? Did you say something? Or did you just keep doing the dishes? The shift happened 8 months before that dinner night. Rachel had friends over on a Thursday. I was in the kitchen making appetizers nobody had asked for, but that I made anyway, because I didn't know how to stop being useful. Through the wall, I heard her voice go bright and performative. Honestly, I don't know how women manage without live-in help, she said. Having Marcus's mom here is the only reason I function. Laughter. Does she mind the cooking and everything? She loves it. It gives her purpose. You know how older women are. They need to feel needed. I was holding a ceramic platter I'd brought from my own house. I set it down on the counter, went upstairs, ordered a small digital recorder online that night. It arrived in 2 days, small enough to sit in a cardigan pocket. I want to be careful here because what I did next wasn't about revenge. It was quieter than that. It was about finally deciding to take myself seriously. Can you pinpoint the exact moment you stopped tolerating? Something not loudly, just in your own mind. I called my oldest friend Dorothea that same week. 30 years as a paralegal before she retired. I told her I had a hypothetical situation. She was quiet when I finished. Then, Jasmine, that is not a hypothetical. That is a situation. Start treating it like one. So I did. For 8 months, I kept the recorder in my cardigan pocket and tracked every dollar I contributed in a spiral notebook hidden inside a hollowed-out devotional book on my shelf, the last place anyone would look. And I found something that changed the shape of everything. When I'd co-signed the mortgage, the loan officer had listed me as primary borrower because I'd contributed the largest single sum. We'd planned to refinance and shift that to Marcus, but life moved fast and it kept getting postponed until neither of us mentioned it anymore. My name was first on that mortgage. A property attorney Dorothea connected me with confirmed it. My legal claim to that property was significant, not absolute, but significant enough that any attempt to push me out without compensation would be, in her words, a serious mistake on their part. I didn't tell anyone. I kept washing dishes, kept making dinner. If you had that kind of leverage, quiet, legal documented, would you move or would you wait? The night of Rachel's promotion dinner, they left at 6. All 4 of them dressed beautifully. Marcus kissed my cheek on his way out. "Don't wait up," he said. "It'll be a late one." I watched the car pull down the drive. Then I went inside and made soup from a packet. Then the text came. I've already told you what it said. What I haven't told you is what happened in the minute after I set the phone down. I sat with the refrigerator hum and thought about George, about the morning he was diagnosed driving home from the doctor's office, how he reached over and held my hand the whole way without saying anything, because some things don't need words. I thought he would not have wanted this for me. I knew it the way I knew his handwriting. So I stood up, called Dorothea. She said she'd been ready for 6 weeks, called my sister Carol, who had a spare room and had been asking me to use it for 2 years. She said, "Come tonight." I said, "Tomorrow's fine." Then I packed. Not furniture, not linens. My clothes, my photographs, the box of letters George had written me during the years he traveled for work, my mother's china figurines, the hollowed-out devotional book. I left the kitchen exactly as I'd found it when I moved in, spotless, fully stocked. On the counter, I left an envelope with a single sheet of paper. "Marcus, I raised you to be a man of integrity. I'm going to give you the chance to become one. By the time you read this, I'll be at Carol's. Don't come tonight. Tomorrow call Dorothea. She will explain the rest. I love you. That has never been the problem. Mom." The cab driver helped me with my bag without being asked. As we pulled through the gates past that fountain, I'd always thought was a little much something lifted off my chest that I hadn't realized I'd been carrying for 3 years. When did you last feel something lift like that? Marcus called 11 times before 8 the next morning. I let everyone go to voicemail. I sat with Carol eating scrambled eggs, walking through everything about to happen. She didn't interrupt once. That's a gift most people don't know how to give. By afternoon, I was at Sandra's office. She walked me through my legal position without softening it or inflating it. 3 paths forward. I chose the middle one. The next morning, she sent a formal letter to Marcus and Rachel, not aggressive, just factual, outlining my legal position, my documented contributions, and a request for a meeting within 7 days. Marcus showed up at Carol's house 4 hours later. He was wearing the gray sweater I'd given him 2 Christmases ago. Hadn't shaved. Eyes red at the edges. "Mom," he said, then stopped. "Mom, I didn't know." "Which part?" I asked. "Any of it. How bad it had gotten." "I looked up the mortgage paperwork last night. Listened to the recordings." He pressed his hands flat on Carol's kitchen table. "I've been telling myself for 3 years that you were happy enough. Happy enough isn't the same as happy. I know that now. You knew it then. You chose not to look." He didn't argue. I respected him for that. We talked for 2 hours. I didn't shout. I told him what the past 3 years had felt like in plain language, the way you speak. When you've rehearsed something so many times it stops hurting and just becomes true. He didn't defend Rachel once. Did you ever wait for someone to finally hear you and find that when it happened, it felt less like relief and more like exhaustion? The meeting with Sandra was 5 days later. Marcus and Rachel sat across from me. Rachel looked like a different person, younger, frightened. When Sandra finished laying out the legal position, Rachel looked at me directly. I owe you an apology. A breath. I've been up for 4 nights trying to find the right words, and I've accepted there aren't any that are large enough. But I'm going to say it anyway. She pressed her lips together. I used you. I told myself you were content that the arrangement was fair. I lied to myself because the truth was easier to ignore. You weren't an arrangement. You're a person. I made myself feel better by making you feel smaller. The room was quiet. Why? I asked. She looked at the table. Because I was afraid of you. Not personally. Of what you represented. The children preferred you. Marcus deferred to you. I was building a career and couldn't be what you were to them, and instead of being grateful, I resented it. She looked up. I know that's not an excuse. It isn't, I agreed. But it's an explanation, and explanations help me understand even when they don't change what happened. We reached an agreement that afternoon. Marcus and Rachel would refinance the mortgage properly, valuing my contribution and repaying it through an equity agreement over 5 years. Fair, documented, real. I would have no further financial obligation to the house and no further claim once the final payment was made. I moved into a small apartment 3 weeks later. 1 bedroom, 4th floor, window facing east. The morning light came in at exactly the angle I liked. I furnished it slowly with things that were mine entirely. No compromises, no one else's taste to work around. I rejoined my book club. Started walking every morning, not for exercise, exactly just to be outside and moving. I signed up to teach a cooking class at the community center on Wednesday evenings for people who found cooking for one too lonely to manage. 12 people came the first week, 23 by the 4th. Marcus called every Sunday. Some weeks he brought the kids. Some weeks it was just the 2 of us with tea talking the way we used to when he was young, about everything about George, about what kind of people we wanted to be. One evening in late spring, Eli called from his mother's phone because he couldn't sleep. I told him the story I always told about a house with a garden and a man who used to sit on the porch with a little boy on his knee, counting fireflies until the boy fell asleep. When I finished, Eli was quiet. Grandma Jasmine, he said, did you know you were brave? I sat there in my east-facing chair in the quiet that was entirely mine and thought about that for a real moment. I didn't know it at the time, I told him. I learned it later. How do you get brave? You get brave, I said, when you finally understand that the people who love you for real don't need you to be small, and the people who need you to be small don't love you for real. Once you understand that there isn't much left to be afraid of. Okay, I love you. I love you too, my darling. Go to sleep. I hung up and sat with that for a while. 9 words on a screen. Heat up the leftovers. Don't waste them. I turned those 9 words into a question. What do I actually owe the people who take me for granted? And I answered it with honesty, with documentation, with legal counsel, and with a suitcase packed so carefully it looked like it had been waiting. Because it had been. I just hadn't been ready to pick it up. Forgiveness isn't a door you open all at once. It's a hallway you walk slowly, putting things down as you go. I don't know where the end of that hallway is with Rachel. Maybe I never reach it. But I'm walking it on my own terms. Every morning, when the light comes through that east-facing window, I feel something so simple it almost doesn't have a name. I feel like myself, not George's widow, not Marcus's mother, myself, Jasmine Jones, 70 years old, visible, whole, and exactly where I chose to be. Is there someone in your life right now who has quietly stopped seeing you, and are you still showing up for them, hoping they'll notice? Leave me a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. And if this story hit something you haven't said out loud, yet share it with one person who might need to hear it.